Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, all of our dudes and dudettes here tuning in. And well, this is a little different than the Dude Cave we're normally seeing. We're here with Tom Licks, President, CEO, whatever title, the man that runs the show here at Cleveland Whiskey Company. We have all these delicious things here. We've done some work up here before, but it's a little unique process here. And I'm so thankful, Tom, that you came by. You're going to break all these down for us and tell us why Cleveland whiskey is so unique. Why should people find it? How it's such an amazing, affordable bourbon that's available on shelves, you know, and we're going to teach everybody how you get to these flavor profiles to where it is a highly sought after bottle of bourbon.
Great.
You do some pretty cool stuff here. We got the Underground series that we're going to talk about. But first, Tom, it's Cleveland whiskey. In my understanding, Cleveland was never part of your past. So why Cleveland, and how did you end up in Cleveland?
Well, so it wasn't part of my past directly, but my mom was born and raised here in Cleveland.
Okay.
And she went to Fenn College, now called Cleveland State University. And my father was from New Jersey. He was here on the GI Bill after World War II. And they met, got married, moved back to the East Coast. And but I have family here. So I've got cousins that I've never met that are still here in Cleveland. And wound up here really because my mom moved back late in life, and she got ill and needed somebody to care for her. My wife and I moved out, and actually fell in love with Cleveland. Didn't expect to stay.
No one ever does.
But it's a great place. I love it. I mean, if we can talk about Cleveland for a little bit,
please. This is the home of Cleveland. Everything, man. So let's talk about it.
So Cleveland is interesting because I spent a lot of my adult life in Boston, living in and around Boston. And so Cleveland and Boston, I think, a lot of sort of shared paths or shared historical paths. They were both world-class industrial cities at one point, and they both sort of fell on hard times. You know, times changed, demand for the products that they were making changed and everything else. And they just, they weren't the world-class cities that they once were. Yep. Both cities had big unemployment issues. They had environmental issues. I mean, Boston's interesting because Boston, you couldn't walk within 200 yards of the harbor. It was so polluted. And, we had the same issue here in Cleveland. The difference between Boston and Cleveland is in Boston, they fixed it and they don't talk about it anymore. Here, we fixed it and everybody still talks about it.
I didn't even know it was a thing in Boston. So mission accomplished.
That's right, because that's what they did. World-class healthcare facilities in both places. It's funny when, and then water. So the advantage Cleveland has is all this fresh water, and that's going to be increasingly important. But the other thing that sort of kept both cities back for a long time was a history of corrupt local government. It was funny. I had Mayor Jackson in here.
That doesn't involve bootlegging, for the record.
Yeah, no. It was the government, and a lot of cities had that problem. And when you had corruption, a lot of the money's drained off. They weren't invested back in the city, and things just didn't get done. And Cleveland had the same issues as Boston. I had Mayor Jackson in here. I was telling him about the comparisons that I make between Boston and Cleveland, and he took a little offense at the idea of corrupt local government. I said, "Look, it's in the past.
You can't argue with court records."
And I said, the beauty is when you fix those problems, the city came back to life, and that's what's happening here in the city. And we've got an educated workforce, both blue collar and white collar, and you need them both really to be successful entrepreneurially. And I love this city. Everybody talks about, gee, if I could go back in time and buy Apple stock or Microsoft stock, I'd be filthy rich. Well, this is like going back in time. When you look at the trajectory of Boston and now what the city has become, Cleveland is doing the same thing. We're just sort of behind a little bit, but we're going to catch up. And making investments in this city, I think, is the right thing to do. And it's the smart thing to do. People will look back 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and say, wow, it's hard to imagine.
Did the mayor wonder about you coming for his job? Because anybody in Cleveland that's watched that, they're ready to run through a wall for you, Tom. They're fired up.
Well, it's funny, too, and I'm a big advocate for the city of Cleveland. It is my adopted home, and I talk about it anytime I can. I remember getting off an airplane here in Cleveland. I was coming back from somewhere, and I had gate checked my luggage. So you know how you stand in that gateway and everybody's waiting for it. And but there's always a little bit of jet fumes in the air. And one guy gets off the plane and he goes around, sniffs around a little bit, and he says, guess I'm back in Cleveland. And I pulled him aside and I said, And I told him this story, and I said, look, I said, you know that any airplane you get off of, there's that jets. If they're fueling the plane, you're going to get it. It's not something about Cleveland. Why do you attribute it to Cleveland when you live here, knowing that there are other people in the jetway who aren't from Cleveland?
Right.
And so
but I love that though, because I'm a chip on my shoulder guy, and Cleveland's also a chip on my shoulder because anybody that's ever been on this show that's from Cleveland, that has had success, that has got to travel the world. They all say Cleveland is an awesome place.
It really is.
And I just don't think it fits the narrative of what people want to think of Cleveland.
Part of that is up to us to change that narrative, to talk about all the positives that are here in the city. And it really is amazing the amount of cultural activities, the amount of great world-class restaurants.
Oh, the food scene. I mean, come on. Let's not, Tom. I mean, I'm
hungry.
Good.
It's good.
I mean, we got but no, I know, all joking this there. You got the Italian community. You got the Polish community. You got the Ukrainian community. You have, there's a strong African-American presence from post-slavery days where they
you need everything.
Everything is in Cleveland.
The city,
Cleveland is United States. It is literally the melting pot. Like I wanted, but all those ethnicity backgrounds have their own food scenes in Cleveland, and we literally have some of the, like Michael Simon, Cleveland. He's got his own restaurant in Las Vegas, but it's all Cleveland style food that he does out there. So, but speaking also of you're on Cleveland proud with this Cleveland whiskey here. You got quite the lineup here. It's taken the place by storm. Cleveland whiskey founded in
Shipped our first bottles in March of 2013.
Okay, 13. I always get 13, 16, not 15. I'm like, I'm not going to take 2 years of history away from you if I can. So it's grown. But how has your process been? Like, how has it been getting started? It just seems like every year you guys are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. When I go to my local shelves, I'm seeing more of a selection of Cleveland whiskey products available, whether it be the Underground series, whether it be your Black Reserve or your Wheat Penny.
Right.
So how has it all been? Like, what was the growing pains, and just kind of in a condensed version, 2013 to 2020?
Condensed version. That's what you want.
Well, we got all the time in the world, Tom. We can do 3-part series if you want. We can go for 3 hours. I'll break it down later. So
it's definitely a journey. I was going to say it's been a journey. No, it is a journey. It continues. We're distributed now in about 16 states.
Congratulations.
Just last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, we shipped our first pallets to South Korea.
Oh my goodness.
So, we're getting, we had an international presence for a while. We were doing almost 20% of our business in Europe, and then the tariffs hit and sort of screwed that all up. We're going to sort of claw our way back in there now that the tariffs have been lifted. But there's, it's interesting. The Cleveland name in Asia is actually pretty big. There's a lot of, things that Cleveland's been doing, international piano competitions.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's just stuff that they sort of think of the Cleveland meaning something of quality, something that's good. So I like that. I want to pursue that. I want to do more work in Asia, definitely.
What has their response been to the Cleveland bourbon? The Cleveland, your Cleveland Black Reserve bourbon. I know your Cleveland whiskey.
Well, it's actually it's pretty interesting in that we're a technology company.
Clearly, we are going to get into that. Folks.
We're a craft distiller, but we're really a technology company, and so the technology, which I know we'll talk about, is really sort of seen as something of benefit in Asia. It's less rooted in tradition. At least for American spirits, and they're open to trying new things. And I think we have an offering that sort of pushes the envelope or pushes out the edges of a box, however you want to call it. But it's seen pretty positively. Now, comparing us to some of the established names like a Jim Beam, obviously we have much less awareness. But if I can get something in somebody's hand and have them try it. They're then fascinated with the story of how we're able to achieve some of the flavors and aromas that we get. So.
It still cracks me up when I see people with a line waiting for a $35, $40 bottle of Weller, and they leave with nothing, and then they'll have the Black Reserve, the whole shelves full, and it's like you clearly just don't know. So
you don't, and I think people just have to try it. That's all.
Oh yeah, and you can take my word for it. It's delicious. I go through about a bottle a month. It's all of it. But, like you said, you're a technological company. Yeah. So that's a nice segue. Everyone, I just want everyone to know, you're not going to come up here and find warehouses full of barrels, 6 racks deep and forever a mile wide. Your technology, and this is where it's really cool, it upsets some of the traditionalists, but that's okay. We're in modern times with modern technology. Explain to everyone your distilling process in a way to help them understand how much different it is from your traditional warehouses that you might find down the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky.
Well, let me take a step back from that.
Please do.
So
Educate me. I'm ready.
I'm ready. Why we approached it this way. So this was I don't know 15 or so years ago. I read this article about the growing middle class in China.
Okay.
And and they were talking about it. The author talked about how there were. It's a huge population, and now the middle class is relatively small, but it's growing, so it could be significant numbers. And I looked into what they were buying, and I'm sort of a social scientist, and I saw that one of the things that was ticking up at the same rate that the middle class was imported bourbon and imported Scotch. And I sort of thought, well, that's sort of interesting, because if demand increases for those products because of the growing middle class, you've got China, you've got India, you've got South America, all around the world, all these new middle class populations coming online, and they're interested in buying. Well, the guy called it, they wanted to buy affordable luxuries. But it struck me, it's not just affordable luxuries, it's conspicuous affordable luxuries. Things they can show off a little bit, share with friends, not too expensive, but having a label from a European or American product was a really positive thing. So I thought that was interesting, because there could be this tsunami of market demand for a product that takes a long time to make. And you just can't crank up production like cornflakes or computer parts. It takes time, and that's part of the nature of it. Well, I thought I'm sort of an amateur chemist. I think if I had a better attention span, I'd be a real chemist, but I don't, and I'll tell you some more stories about that if you want later. But I started experimenting in my basement, and ultimately, because I'm not a real chemist, I made some mistakes that turned out to be some of the process for what we use today, and I came up with a technology for not distilling it differently, but for finishing it differently. So when you think about a classic whiskey, you get anywhere from 60 to 80% of the flavor from the aging process.
Okay.
The aging process simply, it's not really about time, it's about interaction with the wood. So to the extent that you can move alcohol in and out of the pore structures of the wood in a barrel, that's really what drives the flavor, and all of the color, of course. In a barrel, of course, you've got, every 24 hours, you've got some sort of temperature change that causes a slight pressure change as well. That moves the alcohol in and out of the pores of the barrel. And you're getting all that flavor. But it's only going in like a very, millimeter in there, because it can't go in very far. There isn't a lot of pressure change or a lot of temperature change. And it's also because of a laminar layer, a cold glass, and you got drips of water slowly going down and leaving like a snail's trail behind. Well, that's a layer that sort of protects from other molecules getting in there. So that's bad too. That's why you hear about some people, they play loud bass music in their rick houses, or they rotate the barrels or do something to move it around a little bit, because that's helps
interesting. I've never heard the bass.
Well, it makes sense, because it's a pounding sort of thing, and we've experimented with that as well.
Of course you have. Of course.
But anyway, so I made these mistakes, came up with a process, and wound up with a way to essentially use that to not only speed the process, and that's how people tend to think of us, but really what it does is it gets us out of the barrel completely. We make barrels out of American white oak or European oaks and a few other oaks. And we do that not because we were all Pressings enough hundreds of years ago to say that's going to give it some flavor. We accidentally discovered that. And I'm sure that all sorts of woods have been tried in barrels, but they leak like a sieve.
Yes.
So one of the greatest things that we can do is, because we don't use barrels, we use pressure-capable stainless steel tanks in which we vary the pressure, which moves the alcohol in and out of the wood that we put inside the tank. And but now I can use woods like black cherry and hickory and honey locust and sugar maple, and we have tried mesquite and pecan and all sorts of things, which really gives some classic whiskeys a whole different range of flavors and aromas. And that's what's exciting to me, to go places in this classic industry that nobody's really gone before.
No, the Underground Network, when I first learned about it as a barbecue smoke guy, and I knew all the flavors, like, it's like the sugar maple. I was like so excited about to hear that you use that, because in the barbecue community, you hear pecan, mesquite, hickory, cherry.
Sure.
But one of the sweetest smokes there is that no one talks about is sugar maple.
Right.
It's such a sweet wood, and it's so much different than oak.
Right.
So whenever I saw all the honey locust, I was like, what an amazing, like, how did that, when you started this, you're like, I'm onto something here. Was that a eureka, or is that going into it, you knew that was something that you could do with the technology you had and that you wanted to get into it?
So actually, my original thought was look, we can speed up the process because there will be shortages. So we were anticipating shortages well before the shortages actually occurred, and said that demand is going to really exceed capacity. You can't ramp up production that quickly. You got to make big investments in terms of production capability, the stills and the hardware and everything else. And then you've got to put all these barrels and let them sit for 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 years for this slow, excruciatingly slow process to occur. And I'm not that patient a person.
I'm not either.
And I thought, oh my God, if all this demand comes, how are you going to be able to manage that supply? So the whole idea really was to accelerate the process. Now, there's no consumer benefit to that. It means to market when other people's can't. I don't have to worry about shortages. I can, if I could get bottles all the time now. But we can create product and really be a just-in-time manufacturer, the only just-in-time manufacturer of whiskey in the world. It was later, after we sort of started this, when we had a chance to try some black cherry wood. And it was really one of the guys who was working here. He had a tree that was down in his backyard. It had been sitting out there air drying for a couple of years. And we said, I don't remember exactly how it occurred, but we said, why don't we just try that? And oh my God, talk about a eureka moment. When we opened that up and tasted it, was like, oh my God. I mean, it was so good, because we have tried other bourbons and other whiskeys where people put different staves inside a barrel, do all these things, but oak is such an assertive and aggressive flavor, it drowns it all out. So here we can minimize the interaction with the oak and really drop it back to, really bare bones, and let the other flavors come out, like sugar maple. You wouldn't, if you put sugar maple staves inside an oak barrel, if the oak barrel was still your primary maturation vehicle, you could put as many sugar maple staves in there as you wanted, and you wouldn't get any of those flavors. It's just overpowered. Yeah. So
and it's like, who wants a sugar maple oak mix?
It just doesn't work that well. But if you pull out the oak, leave enough in there so it still has the sort of whiskey flavors that you'd expect, but then add on a whole, series of flavors to it, I think then we've done something unique that the other producers, the large producers, can't do.
People really underestimate the flavor of the wood in the process, don't they?
Yeah.
So has that been like the coolest feedback you've gotten? Is like, I would have never guessed. Wow, that changed my life.
We've had a few of those life-changing ones, but mostly it's like, I'm just amazed at this.
Or at least you're the game changer. Game changer is hopefully a word you hear a lot.
Or people get it as a gift, or they were with friends or whatever, and they said, "Oh my God, I didn't even know this existed." And I didn't know you could do this, and it's just been good. Now we started our Black Reserve, which was our basic 100 proof oak based bourbon. That was our first product, and it worked out good for us. We did over 3,600 blind taste tests of that Black Reserve against Knob Creek. Both of them are 100 proof, so it's a good, fair comparison. Blind taste tests, 3,600 of them, 54% of the people said they preferred our Black Reserve, which I thought was amazing. When we started doing that testing, I thought, if we can get 20 or 30%, I'm going to be really happy. And then we're hitting these 50s, and sometimes a little less than 50, sometimes a little more, and 54%. It was like, that's crazy.
You got to double take. Like, surely they got the number.
Well, and I knew that at that point, it was taking us it was still a slower process. It's faster now. It was probably taking us a combined couple of months to make that product.
Yep.
But that was compared to a 9-year-old Knob
Right.
Creek.
Yeah.
And I could make it in a way where I could sell it at a competitive price to Knob Creek too. So that was another thing. In most craft distillers, you just can't afford to be competitive with the main guys. So you've got to price a little higher and hope that people will buy you because you're craft.
Right.
And sometimes that's a good idea. Sometimes it isn't.
And right now it does work because there's such a demand for the mainstream stuff that people are paying triple the value over. And they're saying there is a trend that people realize instead of paying secondhand market prices, they can go find a good craft bourbon for $40 a bottle and still have a good experience. So that was actually a question I had. You're comparing it against 9 years and even 10 years sometimes.
Well, let me stop you there.
Okay.
I don't want to make the comparison about it's an 8-year-old, it's a 10-year-old, it's whatever.
Okay.
It's really and it made sense. The longer it was in a barrel, up to a certain point, the longer it's in a barrel, it tastes better because it had more time to get exposed to the oak. But if you can expose it to the oak much more aggressively and assertively and faster, why do you use time at all?
Right.
I mean, right now we've got a 24-hour process.
Okay.
To make a product that is better. I mean, the beauty also of what we do is we can experiment continually. I don't have to put it in a barrel for 2 years, taste it and say, okay, let's try it again, taste it again. And maybe it's 6 years. I say, this is pretty good. Let's make some more of it.
Right.
Here I can do it. And every week we have taste testings and we check things and we say, yes, this made the process better. This made the process worse. What do we do? And we work it into the program and say, so what we make today is better than what we made 6 months ago. And that's better than what we made a year before that. So our the products that we were testing against Knob Creek aren't even as good as what we're making today.
Yeah. So if anybody had it a couple of years ago, give it another try, is what you're saying. If you didn't like it a couple of years ago, another try.
Yeah, definitely.
There was a point, though, to my question. We just heard about the big, down in Kentucky, the Jim Beam, the leak.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about that.
Right.
It's a liability. We saw like with the Pappy Gate, people were rolling barrels out the back.
Yeah.
Where here, you have that. It's almost like an economic responsibility in a way where you're not taking up a bunch of space. You can operate in a place like you're operating now, which people will drive up wouldn't even think you make stuff like this here in this building. Well, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot less liability now that you have. And if you mess up, like you said, okay, don't have to wait another 10 years.
Exactly.
You don't have to worry about picking the top barrel on the 6th rack front row where it's the hand barrel because it's universal.
Well, and I'm also not trying to blend back to some, I'll say mythicals, which I think half of them are, some mythical recipe from a great grandfather or grandmother that created something. I'm always trying to I want to make it better. I don't want to blend it back to something. I want to keep blending it forward into something better and better. You were talking about leaks and everything else. The other thing is we don't have angel share. I think if you believe in angels, I'm sure they have a perfectly wonderful life. There's no reason we have to share our bourbon with them. I want to keep it. I want to sell it. I want to drink it. Yeah. So that's the other thing. I don't have to.
Well, how much yield? How much yield? Okay, I know not to compare, but let's just say a 10-year age. What's the percentage of yield distillers lose in an extended process?
In an extended, you might open a barrel and only have half of what you started with. Now, more likely, you've maybe lost 20% or 25%, depending on how old it is. And what the temperatures were. But even there, seasonality changes things. So you have a excessively hot and humid summer. That's going to impart a different taste and flavor to if you had a relatively cold or dry summer. Those are all factors in that. The other beauty of this is I can get despite the fact that we're always trying to make it better, I know when I do a batch, I know I'm either experimenting to make something a little bit different, or I'm doing what I made the last time and it's going to be exactly the same. So it's not like one barrel that's going to sit in the northwest upper corner of a rick house is going to taste very different than something in the southeastern basement area.
In the lower floor in the middle of everything.
Which is why, people talk about master distillers, and we don't use that title here. I think it's a little presumptuous to use something like that, but it's the master blenders. Those are the people in those big distillers, I think, are the real masters, because they're trying to, with all sorts of variables and constantly changing, take barrel after barrel and create something that tastes the same over and over again. And I think that's a really difficult job.
Yes.
Our job is made easier because I'm not trying to blend it back. We don't have to have the master blender, but we try to have some really good tasters.
Yeah, and you guys do a bang up job here, and everybody's so awesome. I just want you to know that everybody I've met up here has been
It's a great team. It really is.
So. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break here, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what we have here, and who knows, maybe we'll talk about some of these and maybe even taste one or two.
Sounds good to me.
All right, we'll be back here with Tom Licks of Cleveland Whiskey right after these messages.
Thanks.
All right, dudes and dudettes, we're back here at Cleveland Whiskey Company with Tom Licks, the face that runs the place. He's awesome. He's been talking a lot about the story of Cleveland whiskey, and more importantly, how awesome Cleveland is, because we're all in this together. I'm like an hour and a half from Cleveland. I just round myself up to Cleveland because I'm literally between an hour and a half from Columbus, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland, so I get the pick.
Good for you.
But what's good for me is I made the right choice.
Yeah. Well, good.
That's what's good for me. I made the right choice. Boo Pittsburgh. No, I'm joking. Not really. In Cleveland, we can say that, and they just know.
Yeah, and we don't sell in Pennsylvania, so you're okay.
Yeah. They're post-prohibition laws. Until they get with the times, they're not. They're stuck in the old times, just like old bourbon. We're here with the new times. How about that?
I will say I am a Penn State dropout, so but finished in Boston.
If you would have went to Ohio State, man, you would have fit right in. Or Cleveland State. Cleveland State, you would have graduated with honors, top of the class. No, so 16 states that you're in, and I'm sure you got a lot of stuff working behind. The goal's probably all 50 at some point, and then probably another 50 countries. Let's just face it, worldwide, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, household name.
It's always been the intent.
Yeah. So the growing process has been fantastic. We've talked about the underground. We've talked about your process that you can do, on average, the Cleveland Special Reserve, start to finish.
Black Reserve, start to finish. Well, logistics and time, supply chain and everything, a young distillate might sit in a barrel for 6 to 8 months before we run it through our process.
Okay.
And it gets a little bit of color, a little bit of flavor in that time, and then we finish it off in ours. So depending on how old it is when it goes in, we've got to adjust the program, but we take it from there.
Okay. Yeah. So I have a question here for you, the wheat penny, which I love because every bottle comes with a wheat penny right here in the cap. Mm-hmm. The wheat mash bill was the COVID thing that came up. The wheats were just the most popular thing.
Yeah, right.
Everyone likes that wheatness because it's got a little less biteness to it, a little more of a smooth flavor, less intense. So for someone starting out, they like the smoothness of it. Why did you come up with the name Wheat Penny, and what came up? I mean, there's got to be a story of how it came to where you.
So there is a story.
You have your guys in here with E6000 crafting glue, manually putting pennies.
We are putting them in,
and that's what they do, folks. That's really how they do it.
So it actually starts way back when I was a little kid. So my mom would always tell me, "Look, if you see a penny on the ground, pick it up because it's good luck. Save those pennies." So,
if it's heads up, though,
I never got into that.
I grew up with it being it had to be heads up.
Oh, never got.
So as a kid, I would just flip it over before I picked it up.
I probably would have done the same thing. Yeah,
I was like, it
was just pick them up and save them. So I always save pennies, and over the years, you're saving change, and it always goes in there. And I would start to fill these 5-gallon water bucket bottles with them, the mayonnaise jars and everything else. I had a ton of them. Yep. And, just by living long, I think that I got more pennies. And I always thought it'd be nice to be able to do something with them. At one point I started thinning out the pennies and only keeping the wheat pennies because they were the older ones and they were all copper and something was special about them. And,
you sound like me. You sound like me.
Well, it just I wanted something to do with them, and we were talking about different versions we could come out with, what the next thing would be, and we were talking about a wheated bourbon. It just sort of hit me. It's like, I can use the wheat pennies. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
We'll put them on the tops of all the stoppers in these bottles. So that became the name. We looked up what happened with the wheat pennies, and it turns out, it's 1958. That was the last year they were made, but it was also the year that NASA was started. The first real computer came out. There was a big World's Fair. There was sort of some neat things going on. So it was okay. We can talk about our technology a little bit from that side. And I just thought it would be something really great to talk about and something really special. So yes, we hand drill a little depression in there for every single wheat penny. and then we hand glue them all in, and we're rapidly depleting my stock of pennies. But we found some other sources, and some of our customers have been kind enough to write in and say, "Well, I've got a stock of them. I've got a stock." So
I have a bunch. I want to bring you some up, and I just want to know what states they end up in. Can we do that?
No.
Well, we tried, folks. We tried. No, it's amazing. And to the name brands, the household names, we'll just call them that, even though I think you guys are more of a household name than you probably realize at this point. If you had to compare this to a common thing that's highly sought after on the shelves that's never available, and people are looking for a nice replacement to it, what would you compare this to on your mash bill? Or is it just so awesome it's all by itself?
I think it is a little bit by itself because, frankly, it uses the black cherry staves. So I think that's an important part of what we do.
It is, yeah.
So we use a little bit of toasted oak, a little bit of black cherry. Yep. So I think it's unique. I mean, if you compare it to anything, I would say Maker's 46. I think that's a fair comparison. I think that, I mean, obviously I prefer it. I always want to make sure I like the stuff that we're making. But I think that would be a fair comparison. I think it's a fair comparison sort of price-wise as well. And we have a foolproof version of it as well, which is awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think, and Maker's 46 is an interesting example because they're adding additional staves in there, getting a little better flavor, a little nicer mouthfeel to it. And I think we're doing that, but we're doing that with other woods, which is something that makers can't do.
Right.
So they can experiment with all types of toastings and charrings and even different oak types. But it's all around oak. And that's sort of the funny thing about the bourbon market or whiskeys in general is if you get 60 to 80% of your flavor from the wood and everybody is using oak barrels, that means essentially all of them are going to taste pretty close. I mean, even the highly hyped Pappy Van Winkles down to the not Weller, but Well.
Yeah, the Well
brands.
The stuff in the
there's
bottom.
more similarity than not. Now, people will argue with that, and certainly some are better than others, but it's still around those same flavors. So what we're able to do when we use woods like sugar maple or black cherry, and black cherry just works beautifully.
It's really it's a stunner.
It's a great wood. You do that, you've taken the best of the flavors you might get from oak, but then you're adding on all these other ones. I think it makes for something. We do everything at fairly high proof, or most everything we do is fairly high proof, and I think they come across relatively smooth because of the other woods we use.
Okay. No, the stuff is just next level. I mean, everybody don't listen to me just trying to sell it. Just go get the stuff.
Yeah.
If you're spending 40 on Weller, just go ahead and get a bottle of Wheat Penny, and just, if you don't like it, Tom will refund your money personally out of his own checking account, even too. He said it off record.
I said it off record. Yeah, I know. I'm hoping that part's edited from the final.
No, it's not. We're actually going to make it the preview they're going to get people interested.
It's good. I think I get so many unsolicited emails from people saying, hey, I tried this, I got it as a gift, or I figured, I'll just give it a try. Or my brand wasn't in stock.
Yes.
And they give it a try. And it's really gratifying.
No, and what's gratifying is just watching you guys grow. I mean, and even things here, you have fun.
Yeah.
I've done some really cool drink cocktails with Magic Rabbit, which is a chocolate peanut butter whiskey.
Yep.
And what's cool is it's chocolate and peanut butter.
Yeah. Chocolate is sort of the driving flavor, and it's all natural flavor.
Explain the all naturalness to it. Break that down for everybody. Well, how's it all natural?
And that really started with being able to use some of our technology to experiment with cocoa nibs and other things to get those natural flavors, and then really find some extracts that we use that were made from that, some of our own work, and some we've gotten from some other people and blended it. The peanut flavors come from pecan and peanut and some other nuts as well. So it's really, I mean, we're big experimenters here.
So, ladies and gentlemen, dudes and dudettes here. This is called the library we're in here.
Yeah,
this is where big boys go to play, and they do it in the form of liquor. With all these different. These are all different experiments you've messed with over the years, right?
It's just a small sample.
That's
Yeah, small.
how much bigger
the
the
ones
room
that
do
we
you
thought
need?
the ones that we thought were worth keeping.
That's
I
funny.
mean, we've done. I mean, we try different woods all the time. I remember doing Osage orange, which was really an interesting color, almost an orangey, burnt red color. I liked the color; it was different, but it tasted awful.
Yeah.
It was tasted awful. So it's like, okay, check that off the list.
Is there anything on this wall here that you wouldn't even give to your worst enemy? Or is this where the
well, there's
keepers?
some, we
is
have
this where
some,
the
we have
keepers
some
stay?
other companies' products up there too, so I can't really say. specifically.
Oh, okay. We got
So-
Pappy up here hanging out.
No,
No, I'm joking. I know.
But we're experimenting a little bit with low alcohol, no alcohol as well. So
Okay.
there's a couple of products up there.
Is the
other
CBD?
products.
Where do you think the CBD craze is going to go in the bourbon community? That's
You know,
actually a really good question. I didn't even
yeah,
think about until
I-
right this minute.
I have no idea, but I think that here in Ohio we can't do that. So I haven't even looked at it.
I know there are like CBD on the backwoods. They're doing like CBD infused clear and
Right,
stuff like
right,
that.
yeah.
You see, but I was just curious on what you're
I mean,
hearing
I'm-
in the scene, if
I-
anything at all. That
Well,
was,
I think it's sort of interesting when you think about that. I don't want to necessarily add something unless it provides some really interesting flavor
Right.
as well. And I'm not sure that really wouldn't do that. Now
It
I could
probably-
I see using hemp and hemp seeds and things like that, but yeah, just I
it
think,
would be an interesting flavor
Yeah.
profile to pair it with. It'd be really hard to do with like your pure. You almost have to do
And-
like a flavored blend. Of
And if
some
I had
sort.
ever done something like that, I couldn't tell you about it because that would be illegal. So,
Right. So no,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just asking what you've read in books, Tom,
Right.
because I know you wouldn't.
Yeah.
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 But no, it's just curious, with just the way everything is going, all the new stuff that's out there, and so let's talk about the struggles of COVID with the bourbon industry. Obviously, you've kind of already hinted around that your bottles not being available all the time. You have your supply shortages.
Yep.
But how has the
Well,
demand?
in fact, look at these two bottles.
Okay.
They're different, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So same product, although I think one is
Everything's in bourbon on me.
one is foolproof and one isn't, but they're meant to be in the same bottle. But
Yeah,
we
this
had-
one here
we
is a
had-
little
we had-
taller.
We had to swap them out because of bottle shortages. It's really hard to find bottles, and it's hard to find the same bottle. Prices are going up like crazy, but even worse than price increases and trucking increases and everything else that goes into it, it's the idea that you picked a bottle for your product and now you can't get it.
Yeah. And
That's a tough one.
in this industry now, anytime you had did you have to get new approval and you have to go to a new bottle? Is it that strict where you have to use the same
No,
bottle?
I can use this. I could use a different bottle as long as I don't go to extremes. And
Not
this one's
keep the
close
same
enough.
label.
I've got to keep the same label. I can adjust the size of the label a little bit, which we had to do for this. You really can't tell, but the label itself is a little different. It's modest dimensions. Just to
Yeah,
sort of
you
work.
really can't. This one
Yeah.
over here looks a little narrower than this
Yeah,
one, but
yeah.
you'd have to if you wouldn't have said it.
So
I
we
wouldn't have noticed it.
wanted to, when we made the adjustment, we said, well, let's adjust it for the new bottle, but make sure we can use it on the old bottle when we get that back again.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just been hard, and delivery times they take us forever. But everybody has the same problem. We're all in the
Yep.
same boat.
Yeah, you're on the same playing
Some,
field. at
some of
least.
my friends who are in the craft distillery business really had problems because they had custom bottles that they had made that they'd spent a whole lot of money on doing a custom bottle. These are all stock bottles, and then they couldn't get their custom bottles, so they're really out of luck.
Well, luckily, the keep it simple method and let my product do the talking has paid out in that one unexpectedly. You never
Yeah.
the things that's the thing about business. But has the demand increased since COVID? Because they say in tougher times, movie theaters and
Mhm.
alcohol are the two safest things that you can invest in
Yeah.
because
And movie theaters couldn't because of COVID. So,
Right.
Yes. So it was interesting. We put a lot of our effort into having distribution in stores and much less effort into trying to get into bars and restaurants.
Yes.
I mean, I don't mind being in them, but that used to be the only way you get the word out was through a bartender talking to you. Now you've got social media. I think the times have changed. So we said, let's use social media really effectively and get it into distribution so people, when they hear about it, they can find it readily.
Yeah. Brand awareness.
So when COVID hit and bars and restaurants closed, we weren't impacted nearly as much as some of my other distiller brethren who were really focusing on that sort of work. So we did okay. It was a little tricky when liquor stores were doing, the call-in pickups and, drive-bys and everything else, because people then, when they call and say, well, what do you want? They remembered the big names. They didn't necessarily remember, and having a shelf presence is really important for us. So people go in and say, oh yeah, I've heard of Cleveland whiskey, or that looks different. But when all you're doing is, get me some Jack Daniels or some Jim Beam, that doesn't work out that well for us. But the good news is we've had, we just finished our 5th consecutive year with double-digit revenue growth. It's we finished our 3rd year of profitability.
Let's get some on that. Let's go.
And,
Let's go.
So we're growing, and we're trying to invest everything into, we're building a new facility. And
I wasn't going to talk about that, but I heard.
We're building a new facility. When we move in there, we'll have 20 times the production capacity, ultimately. And but demand is exceeding our supply. We can't make it fast enough.
If it's one thing you're learning, if you only need 2 times more of the production, you might as well go ahead and get used to making 4 times production, because it'll probably get there.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. And it just goes to show you, when you graduate, when you outgrow a complex in this kind of industry, is that like the sign of like, we are definitely onto something? When you outgrow a place, you're like, okay, didn't see that happening, but here we are.
Yeah, no, it's been good, and I think the future is good for us. So we work hard, and we have a simple mission statement. I don't know if you've ever heard it before, but it's
I'll tell everybody. They don't know it.
Every day make good whiskey and do the right thing. That's it.
Be good, do good, good things will happen.
So that actually worked out. That gives me a segue into another quick little story.
Please do. I love stories.
We did when COVID hit, one of the other things we did, like a lot of small distillers, we made hand sanitizer.
Okay.
But ours was a little different in that
you could still drink it.
No. So the first, no, not at all. Don't say that.
No.
So we like in the very first week, we were thinking of it, and apparently, some other distillers were thinking about it. We nobody really entered the game yet, and I got a call from one of the head pharmacists over at the Cleveland Clinic. And she said that she had been on a tour here at the facility, and so she knew of us. And she said, I heard that distilleries might be able to make hand sanitizer. There was a point where there were real shortages of it.
That was scary.
And she said, would you be able to make hand sanitizer for us? And I said, absolutely. We're just thinking about it. I'd love to do it. And we talked about it a little bit more. And then she said, well, what price are you going to charge us, and what sort of agreement do we need? I'll get the lawyers here involved, and I'll bring in the team to get an agreement done. We want to do this fast. And I said, look, we just agreed over the phone. That's a virtual handshake to me, and we got a deal. We're not going to charge you a dime for it. We'll make it as fast as we can, as much as we can.
Look at you guys.
And it was part of the doing the right thing.
Well, that's the Cleveland brand. That's Cleveland.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we want Cleveland to be. Yeah. And believe it or not, folks, that's how we are in Cleveland. We aren't mean.
We made, I think, if I remember the number right, about 420,000 4-ounce bottle equivalents of hand sanitizer. Distributed most of to the Cleveland Clinic. They've got 51,000 frontline healthcare workers, so we provided that for them. And then we also delivered cases throughout the county and surrounding areas, so to fire stations, emergency medical, the ambulance services, nursing homes, police stations, anybody who was really in contact with the public. And then, we didn't expect it. It wasn't part of the plan, but we got some publicity. And because of that, we had people then calling and saying, how can we help? So we had everything from small other distilleries saying, gee, I've got a tote of high proof alcohol. Can you use it? I had a beer distributing company say, can you use our beer because it's going to go skunky? It's being returned from all the bars and restaurants.
Yeah, just run it.
Can you distill it? So we got, this place smelled like brewery for a while because we were having all these kegs dropped off. The trucks were lining up, dropping them off. That's were emptying them as fast as we could. We had to invent some systems for emptying like a dozen kegs at a time and moving all that into tanks without it foaming up. And we did that. We had, package companies, box companies. We had freight companies coming in and saying, how can we help? How can we distribute? So we were able to do a lot more because of the help we had. It was real community effort.
Yeah.
But it was good. I mean, I'm hoping those days are over, that we don't have to make it again. And of course, now there's plenty of hand sanitizer on the shelves, but and I'm hoping, hoping for
Right.
less.
Well, it just goes to show you, you sow enough karma seeds that eventually a couple of them grow and make you a nice yield and harvest. But that you don't do it for that.
No.
You're like all the other dudes and dude networks that are on here. We sit there and we just help each other out, and hopefully, if you put out enough, people will want to do nice things for you in return.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So,
Yeah.
speaking of nice things, I think you're going to let me share. You're going to share here with me one of the things here. We're going to let's. You want to drive into one of these here?
You said you've tried wheat penny, but
I don't think I've done.
Did you do the high proof version?
I have not done the high proof
So
version.
the high proof version.
And then what's the?
That's 115 proof.
And this is the rye.
Oh, you know what? Maybe you've tried. Have you ever tried the rye?
I've tried not the rye. I've tried the black cherry, but not the rye.
Well, then let's do the rye.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I love rye. I am a rye guy.
Well, then this is the right thing. This is it is a classic rye.
Hold it up there for everybody to see.
I'm going to see what it's 90 proof. This is our Cleveland Underground line. So the Cleveland Underground line are all the things that we use a range of woods on. This one happens to use black cherry wood. Again, that's our sort of go-to wood. It's sustainable. It's all air dried. We cut it to size and shape for use in our tanks. And I think it turns out really nice.
Oh, I'm excited for this. There might be another bottle coming home.
So,
cilantro.
So I know that you know this, and I suspect that a lot of your viewers know it as well. But let me just say one quick thing about drinking a whiskey.
You never know.
So a couple things. One is, you got a glass like this, don't swirl it. Don't swirl it around, because you've got that high alcohol content in there, and the first thing that's going to give off is the ethanol. So when you go to smell it, all you're going to get is a nose full of ethanol.
And you
do. Just let it sit there. If you want to swirl it a little bit, you can do that, but don't give it a heavy swirl. It's not wine. The other one is, so many of us, we learned how to drink whiskey watching the old cowboy westerns. Guy bellies up to the bar, gets the shot, shoots it back down. Well, that's because the whiskey back then, it sucked. It was awful.
It was really bad.
You wanted to down it as fast as you possibly could. Today, you want to sip it. So you're going to want to take and I'm not telling you this, but
no, I want to do it the way it's meant to be done.
You're going to want to take just a tiny, tiny little sip first. Slush around your mouth a little bit. You're going to wake up your mouth.
Yeah.
So you don't want a big swallow of this right away. You don't want to wake up all your taste buds. And they say, okay, yeah, and I'm awake. I'm ready to really try it again. I didn't talk about the smelling, but obviously, before you did that, we would have put our nose down into that glass. Smelled it, and we can do that because we didn't swirl it around. If we swirled it around, you'd be burning your nostrils. And by the way, I'm not a whiskey snob in any way, shape, or fashion. I think you should drink whiskey any way you want, as long as it's Cleveland whiskey, of course.
Yeah.
But people are going to hate that I say this. If you want to drink your whiskey in a Coke, you drink it that way.
Yeah.
If that's what you like. Don't get into this, oh my God, you have to drink it this way or you have to drink it another way. I'll tell you something about ice in a minute, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So we took our first tiny little sip. Now we can take a little larger sip. And again, you just sort of roll it around your mouth, get all your taste buds involved. It's 90 proof.
Yeah, it's smooth, man.
Yeah.
Tom, and you're right. And what's crazy is,
and you notice when you swallow it as well, you have enough of the burn to know it's a whiskey going down there, but it is not uncomfortable. And, if you're an experienced drinker, this is
I'm an experienced drinker of bourbon. If there was someone in this conversation to potentially be out in the woods from time to time, it probably wouldn't be you. So, the actual science of drinking this. Yeah. I mean, I've never went through one of the big tours, so what you're teaching me, believe it or not, is actually new to me. So you are teaching someone in this. But yeah, look, what about your story? Because that was killer, a little bit off front, and then, the flavor is definitely more palatable.
Yeah, you're really getting the whole thing. People talk about, putting in ice. They talk about, the ice stones, things like that. But,
Which are nice.
But I tell people don't use them because they can chip your glass.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're very. That's what I was getting ready to say, because most of your cocktail glasses like these are very delicate glass. It's not double pane,
and you don't want to be drinking those chips of glass. So I say throw them away.
Yeah.
So my preference is don't use a full ice cube either, because quite frankly it's going to dilute everything much too much. So I take, even if I'm at a bar, I ask for chipped ice, and even if they got to hit it with a hammer and make a chip out of it, do it chip. Then taste it neat first, but then try it with one little chip of ice. It'll change the aroma, change the flavor. It's like an entirely new drink. Then you can add another chip and do it again. It will continue changing it. You can do that 6, 8, 10 different chips before you've even come close to what a full ice cube would have been. And I think you get a whole sort of symphony of flavors that way. Now, my late wife used to say it was only because I was a cheap bastard and I could buy one drink and it would replace 6 of them otherwise.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great way to drink.
I'm also called a cheap bastard too, Tom. I just want you to know. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm frugal, except for when it comes to my bourbons. I'll spend all the money.
But even then, you can enjoy it, without really guzzling.
You know what's funny is, like, now after you said, like, the little tip, like, even just the smallest little sips now is an experience. So you could take, like, this is a really good sipping whiskey. Yeah, because it's rye whiskey.
For sure.
Yeah, so this stuff here, you can take this 1.5 ounce shot, and you can sit with some buddies around a fire and sit there. I mean, look,
take your
you
time.
you can even put the pinky out.
You can, and take your time with it. Take your time.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm not going to take it all at once.
So you want my moonshine story?
Always down for a good moonshine story.
So we didn't call it moonshine, but when I was in the Navy years ago.
Thank you for your service, Tom.
Thanks. When I remember I got stationed on this old destroyer. I was trained as a machinist mate. I got stationed on this old destroyer. It was about to be decommissioned. The officers were off worried about their other duty stations. So it was run pretty much day to day by these chief petty officers. I get on this ship, and this one chief comes up to me and says, "Kid," obviously it was a long time ago. He says, "Kid, you're going to be my apprentice." I didn't know what he was talking about, but it takes me through the ship, and finally we went into this one compartment, open up a hatch in the deck, go down this ladder, and down there, he's fermenting fruit juice from the galley. So it was really just a sugared, juice, really like a sugared Kool-Aid. And so he was doing the basic fermentation. Then all you really need is a heat source and a cooling source to distill. Heat to boil things off, and then a cooling source to turn the vapor back into a liquid. So what do you got on a ship?
Best science experiment there is.
So you got steam lines going throughout the ship. That's what powered these old ships.
Yeah.
Powered all the equipment, powered the turbines, the electric generators. Everything was powered by high pressure steam. So he drilled a hole in one of the steam lines. Now he had a heat source for his little makeshift still that he had down there.
So you had an open hole in a steam line.
Well, he had put a pipe.
Okay.
No, he had a pipe.
I was like,
but he drilled into it. I mean, because you could shut it down and drill into it, and especially when you weren't out at sea, there's a lot of work you could do. And then there's seawater lines going through the ship as well to cool the equipment, to cool the spaces for firefighting purposes. So you've got seawater constantly circulating. So that's your cooling source. You drilled another hole in that line. So now he had a jury rig still. He was making what he called hooch, moonshine, not only for our ship but all the surrounding ships. And so he had this thriving business, and I was his apprentice.
So he was a petty officer.
He's a chief petty officer.
Yeah, petty. Yeah, petty. That's the title fit.
Well, no.
Hey, but you work your way up the rank. I don't care. You can do whatever you want.
My way up over time too, but I learned a tremendous amount from him, and that's where I started distilling.
Yeah.
So now I like to say that I was government trained in my distilling. Now that's a story. Now I know we're telling your audience here, but that's a story we had. No matter what your politics, it doesn't really matter. We had the fortune of having President Obama come through the distillery and take a tour here.
Oh, really? What was that like?
It was pretty amazing.
Wasn't that cool?
It was pretty amazing. I mean, again, whatever anybody's politics are, having the president of the United States come through and tour your facility. He was supposed to be here for about 5 minutes because he was just stopping, doing a quick little photo op, saying a few words. He was doing a speech downtown, and he spent, I don't know, close to 40 minutes with us.
Oh, wow.
Every time his staff came up and said, Mr. President, we got to go, because he was supposed to stop at other places. And he put his hand up and says, no, I'm good. This is good. But he was here. He was talking basketball.
What was his
staff.
favorite? Did he have a favorite?
You know, I'm not allowed to ever say if he actually sampled the product here.
Oh.
But I will say that, so they send around, with the president, they send around these SWAT teams.
Yeah, so this is all, dude. I've never been in this, so this is interesting.
To safeguard him. So they're like perched on buildings and everything. So every scheduled stop, they've got advance teams. So they might have 6 teams engaged. And essentially, when you do one, if it's, if there's no time to get to the other one, they're sort of done for the day. So after he left, the whole SWAT team came down. So it was Secret Service and SWAT team. They came down. They got these rifle cases that looked like they were 7 foot tall. We didn't see the rifles, but they big rifle cases. And they all sat down and drank with us for a couple of hours that night.
Heck yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Heck yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, you felt secure. You probably never felt more safe.
Yeah.
You're like, it's like back on the ship.
It was good.
Tapping into a steam line like the old days.
The stories they could tell and everything. It was pretty good.
I've heard those are some interesting people to chat with. Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, if it's good enough for any president of the United States, it's definitely good. Definitely good for me. We don't do the whole politics thing on here unless it's a happy story, that's like just really cool to talk about. Yeah. But no, that's just goes to show you, Tom, and I'm sure, like you said, you're getting emails all the time. You guys are killing it. I know you even have the blocks that you might start doing for the barbecuers again here at some point.
Yeah, we did our smoker bricks for a while, and then just didn't have the volume that we needed to support. We were in 371. What were the name of the stores? I'm blanking on the names of this.
You got Ace, you got
Ace.
Ace is the helpful.
And then there's one that's True Value or something, and I think that's what I was getting confused. But they're all sort of the same sort of. I think they're now even co-owned.
Hey, in Cleveland, there's a lot of blue collar people. We got all kinds of hardware stores.
It was pretty good, but we just didn't have a consistent enough supply. I think when we move into a new facility and we're up and running, we might start that up again.
Just do it retail in-house. Yeah. No, hey, another reason to check out this new facility. Are we allowed to know where it's at, or do you just have to keep track on Cleveland Whiskey to see the updates?
Yeah, I think we'll start putting updates. We're just getting our final permits in place. I hope we actually start building and doing some construction down there. The first thing we're going to do is we're not going to make it pretty. We're just going to make it operational, move our existing operations over there and expand some of the systems. And then later, we'll work on making the building pretty and doing tours and everything else. And ultimately, we'll open a restaurant, a bar.
Yeah. Need someone to come taste some of that food. I like carbs and a lot of them. But no, so everyone, the website is down here below, www.clevelandwhiskey.com. Very exciting things coming up here in 2022. As the old saying, Lord willing and the creek don't rise. But we're really excited for you. I know I'm very thankful for letting myself and the Dude Network come up here and be a part of this and kind of make Cleveland Whiskey our bourbon home, I guess, whiskey home of the Dude Network. So thank you.
My pleasure. Glad to do it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the drink. It's much appreciated. It is delicious. Ladies and gentlemen, dudes and dudettes, Tom Licks.
Cheers.
Cheers. Nostrovia.
Nostrovia. Da.